UDM leader General Bantu Holomisa joins me now. He's part of the planning committee for the funeral of the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The General joins us now for the conversation. General, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know that it is quite a busy time for yourselves as well as those that are part of the planning committee. Can we just start in terms of just understanding how are the planning and the preparations going ahead of the funeral tomorrow?
As far as I can see, the plan is proceedings are going according to the plan, which we hammered it and finished many years ago, when the bishop and his family, as well as the church led by Bishop Mangope, agreed that in the event that something happens to him when he was sick, this is the kind of funeral he wanted. He wanted. And I'm satisfied so far, and it's according to what he wished for.
Yeah. It says something about the spirit of the late Arch. I mean, as you're saying that the details are everything that he's requested. When we look back to the memorial service that was held, and even the proceedings in itself, simplistic yet dignified, I mean, to be able to articulate that and to pay respect and homage to that plan, are we expecting something similar coming to tomorrow, where we're seeing the simplistic manifestation of the life of the Archbishop Desmond Tutu?
Yes, when I went to visit him in his house, when he was seeing me off, we stood next to his garage. And he made it clear that, General, please, I don't want this flamboyant funerals where you hear sounds of guns and everybody. Keep it simple, my son. And Bishop Mangope worked with him. And we carried the orders. Tomorrow, I don't expect any other thing like you normally see in state funerals.
Well, General, as you're saying, he said, my son, this is what I require as the final wishes. I don't know how many people have actually asked you this, but how are you doing? You're part of the planning committee on this, but it does not take away from the fact that you are laying to rest someone who is a father figure to you. So in that respect, how are you?
I'm fine. You must also remember that I'm an Anglican, so Bishop Tutu was my boss. Currently, it's Bishop Mangope, who took over from Bishop Ndungane, who happens to come from my village. His father, Ndungane's father, was a reverend who usually we used to pray for us at home, in particular my father, Faith Holomisa. So I've been in this passage of these clergy people for quite some time. And it was an honor, really, for me to have assisted Bishop Mangope and the church, and indeed the family of Bishop Tutu, to realize this day.
You know, many would say that the Arch was borrowed to us as South Africans, and it was really borrowed to the world, where his family had to then take the sacrifice and bear the brunt of the rest of the world having to come to terms and actually having to experience him. As we return him back, how is the family holding up during this time, and how has you been able to see them through a difficult time, but a time that we can allow for the celebration of a life well lived and fully lived at that?
Well, I can't describe it more than Bishop Tutu himself. When I went to see him on the day I decided to help them, Bishop Tutu came through. I heard him on the passage saying, General, welcome. You know, you and Bishop Mangope are planning for my funeral, but the person who is none other than Leah. Look at her leg. She had a swollen leg. I think you should prepare a funeral for him, for her first.
Oh, goodness.
So that was Bishop Tutu. So the family, I think, have acclimatized themselves on these conditions, and because they have been part of guiding the whole process.
You know, General, I'd like us just to move away and move our attention a little bit from the funeral proceedings, as you've clearly articulated, in terms of everything being done according to the wishes of the late Arch. But I'd like us to just pay attention now to the state capture report that is due to be released next week, Tuesday, following obviously another delay. And it's been quite clear that from your standpoint, and we'd actually like to get the first sentiments around your thoughts regarding now this report coming out on Tuesday next week, but not being the report in its entirety, where we're expecting another one in February, and then we're expecting 4 months between then, June or so, where the president will then articulate it. What are your thoughts regarding that process?
How I wish that we listened to people like Bishop Tutu, right from the early days when they were fighting for apartheid to be done away with. And instead, we abandoned the original agenda. And then we saw people parading and masquerading as struggle stalwarts. Yet, on the other hand, they were busy looting our resources. If they had listened to people like Bishop Tutu and many others, we wouldn't be here today or talking about state capture. I listened to people to say, even clergy people, we will take over the spears, fallen spears, this and that. Why did they keep quiet when the country was going down the drain? We are now on a slippery slope. And there doesn't seem any turning around point. But anyway, let me come back to your question. As a former head of government, procedurally, when you appoint a commission of inquiry, you allow that process to be completed. In between, you release interim reports. But Judge Zondo never did that. I don't know what is the aim of releasing this in piecemeal fashion. What I would have expected him to do is to say, I need more time to finalize this report, and then table the report either in Parliament or to the President. But unfortunately, since the President was a witness in this commission, I don't think it would be a good idea in the interest of even the image of the President himself to allow that he be responsible for dealing with that commission's report. Instead, I would recommend that the judge must go to Parliament, table the report, tell us briefly the executive summary reads out, and then the Parliament can decide, one, which areas must be referred to the law enforcement agencies, which areas would need amendment to the rules and regulations of policies. We cannot expect the ANC leaders, unfortunately, that they would be presiding over this report, especially the executive, because they have been implicated heavily on these issues. So our hope is that these reports will find their way to Parliament. We don't want anything from the Cabinet or President telling us what must be done about those reports. They've got nothing to say, no business at all in those reports.
To interject that, just General, is it a cause for concern around the transparent or lack thereof manner in which this report could possibly be dealt with? That how do we expect those that are implicated to handle the matter in a non-objective, honest manner for the benefit of all South Africans, given the severity as well as the, maybe for lack of a better term, the trickiness of those that are implicated within this report? Is there a concern that they will not be dealt with the transparency and the honesty within which it deserves?
That's precisely why I'm saying let's refer the matter to Parliament. The executive, in particular, of this country has no business to do with those reports, because they are the ones who open the floodgates, the hyenas to come in and out of their departments or SOEs. And so, in order to be transparent, really, let Parliament, we don't even need to discuss as member of Parliament. It's just to say this report must be referred to the law enforcement agencies. For instance, how do you expect that the executive would deal with the billions of rands which were siphoned from state departments through Bosasa or Hitad or Chancellor House back to Lutuli House and its leaders? So no, and Judge Zondo would have failed if he has not indicated to the South Africans that those billions which were stolen by the ANC must be returned back to national treasure. If he had not done that, then we're doomed.
General, we'll leave it there for this evening. Thank you very much for your time. General Bantu Holomisa, the UDM leader, just giving us the latest in terms of what are the funeral proceedings looking like ahead of tomorrow's funeral arrangement for the late Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, of course, under his capacity as well as part of the planning committee. And then obviously just regarding the state capture report, we're expecting it next week, Tuesday. And of course, we're expecting it to also be present in February. But he's saying that it needs to be presented live before Parliament to avoid any sort of inkling of the withholding of information and transparency not being adhered to.